this digital TE briefing. This briefing video, this digital briefing, is for uh, my TE students in the Wits School of Education, and this will be uploaded on my digital platform, which is the Opinionated Science Educator. The reason for this digital discussion is that it allows a deeper, um, allows me to uh, delve deeper into some of the aspects of TE that are important to note. All of these are actually in the TE study guide. So the video can be used in conjunction with your actual TE guide. And you can refer back to the video whenever needed. This series, the first video, is looking at what is expected of you. The second will look at the types of assessment that will be done in TE and will contribute towards your mark for this practical component. The other videos will look at lesson planning, ideas for implementing active learning strategies, how you can deal with classroom management. And the final video will just be a recap of all the important things you need to have in place as a student during TE, and just a summary of the important things that you need to take note of and what I will be looking for when I come and do the classroom observation at your school. So welcome to my group of TE students. And while you are looking at this video, you might as well subscribe to my channel, The Opinionated Science Educator. In this video, I will go through what you can expect and what is expected of you during TE. All of these expectations are found in the guidelines for a successful teaching experience. Now, what I've done so far is I've set up or created a WhatsApp group for us to communicate with each other. This kind of communication I think is very important, and we'll do all the communication in this group. Then I designed the group icon. Now, the group icon is specifically includes some motivational things for you about what an effective teacher is, what great teachers are, and what good teachers do. Then the group's description was created, and it also shares the aims of the group. So it's to share TE challenges and victories with each other and with me as your tutor, to offer you support and guidance as your TE tutor, to manage and organize the tutor visits. And it's better to do everything in this group. So upload your timetables and all of that here. And it's for you to encourage your peers. Now you're isolated from each other. This is a good time to support each other. Ask for assistance when you need it. Maybe a colleague can help you, or I can help you. And it's just to check in with each other. Now, I've also included a welcome message for you. And if you need any assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. I've added the PDF document for the guidelines for successful teaching experience so that it is immediately accessible to you. And then I've added all the pre-service teachers that are on my list. So the WhatsApp group is created, and we will now communicate with each other. So for example, I will let you know this video is ready. Now, the ABC introduction to TE. Now, these points are taken from the introduction in the guidelines. Firstly, during TE experience, you will spend time in a school. 6 weeks, you will be there, and I will come to visit you at least twice. Then, the whole purpose of TE, remember, you are a teacher in training. So it's to learn to teach under guidance with feedback. Now, where does that guidance come from? Firstly, your supervising teacher at the school. Hopefully, they will mentor you, and you will be guided by the supervising teacher at school. Second level of guidance is with formative feedback will come from your university tutor, which in this case, for my group, that is me. Now, your TE is the practical component of your B.Ed degree or your PGCE. So taken from that article, what student teachers learn. Firstly, it's preparation for student teachers. It's critical in your development. Teaching practice offers you real-world experiences that you acquire from the actual class teaching before you become a qualified teacher. Now, this is an important part of the developmental process. Please try and use critical incidents to notice, reflect, and reshape your teaching. Such reflection is critical for you to grow as a teacher, and it's the first step in your professional development. Now, what is a critical incident? Well, it's an unplanned or unanticipated event that happens during a lesson, either in the classroom or outside the classroom, that will give you insight into your teaching. Lastly, attendance at the school and completion of TE is the actual examination for the TE course. Now, things I'd like you to ponder over as you think about teaching. Maybe you thought teaching is a half-day job. Many people do. But what work does a teacher actually do? So let's look at this. Firstly, you spend most of your time in front of the class enacting lessons that you have planned. Lesson planning is also a big part. You spend time researching the topic, preparing your lesson plan, thinking of the best strategies, and so on. You will also be a leader and a manager in the classroom. Classroom management is part of your management style. You're a leader, you're a role model to the students that are in front of you. So you'll also spend a lot of time, and this will happen mostly at home, where you will be assessing students and marking their work and so on. Then you are playing an important role in the curriculum implementation. So as a student teacher, teachers will be worried, oh, I hope they don't mess up my planning and my curriculum and teaching all the important concepts. Teachers will often do that. Just remember that they're worried about the examinations that the students have to write. As a teacher, you also play an important role in students' life, and you need to remember teaching is a profession. There's a certain level of professionalism required, which includes learning and your own professional development. So, to summarize, things I would like you to ponder. Firstly, a teacher has many roles in the class, school, and the community, and you often take on other roles based on what the student needs are in front of you. So teachers work an average of 47 hours a week. That's more than most careers where you have only a 40-hour week. A quarter works 60 hours, and 1 in 10 teachers work more than 65 hours per week. That pie chart summarizes a teacher's weekly hours. At an international level, there's teaching, planning, teamwork, grading, counseling, school management, administration, dealing with parents, a whole lot of other things that a teacher has to do. Second point to ponder. To play the above roles effectively, a teacher requires knowledge, skills, attitudes, personal attributes, and certain life habits to be a successful and effective teacher. So a teacher's competency traits, which are the knowledge, skills, and attitudes, are based on your initial teacher education, and they develop through experience. And this is often filtered or amplified by what you believe as a teacher in terms of learning, teaching, and discipline. Now, the third thing to ponder is, firstly, let's just have a look. Knowledge is the facts and concepts you need. The attitudes are your feelings, emotions, beliefs, and values about something. Your skills are the different tasks you have to perform, such as planning, classroom management, all of those things. And habits are those aspects of behavior that are repeatedly and consistently done without effort or conscious thought. Third thing to ponder, you need to continually improve teaching practice, and this needs to be done to improve student performance. So a teacher needs specific traits, abilities, a willingness to learn and to develop in order to do this successfully. So note, there's no single blueprint for success when it comes to teaching. There are many different approaches. You have to find what works best for you. But there is a certain code to live by as a teacher that will allow you to be successful. And just remember, You are the supreme act of a teacher is to awaken the joy. Learning should be joyful, not boring, to actually develop students' expression of knowledge. So how teachers spend their day, just a summary. This is from the teachers in one of the US states. You spend 2 hours in meetings with other teachers, 3 hours researching and learning to use new equipment and teaching aids, 5 hours counseling and individual instruction, 5 hours grading or marking, and this is often done at home, 8 hours of classroom prep, 1 hour in meetings with teachers, and 2 hours with certain school duties. 30 hours then are spent in the classroom. So these teachers spend 57 hours per week as part in their job. So during TE, the things you'll observe and experience. Now, during TE, you will witness firsthand what teachers actually do. You will learn a lot about teaching, especially those things that you never saw as a learner in school. You only saw what your teachers did at school in class, but you never saw all the hard work that was put into delivering that good lesson or the lessons that you saw. So the amount of reading and research that a teacher needs to do before each lesson to plan the lesson effectively. So you might need to brush up on your content for a topic, and you will need to refer to the curriculum to understand what not to mention, what to emphasize. So types of questions you should be asking. What have the learners learned before? What are the common misconceptions in this topic? Do you know the content well enough to answer any question? What instructional strategy is best for this topic? What resources will you need for this topic? So those are all the things to do with planning and research. Secondly, presenting the content. You need to present the content in ways learners will understand. You will be making your own teaching resources and learning materials. You will be devising ways for learners to engage meaningfully with the resources and to manage the process effectively. So the kinds of questions you should be asking. What are the key or big ideas of this topic? What are the main concepts that you will need to teach to link to these concepts? How will you sequence these ideas? How will you sequence the activities and resources that you have made for teaching? How will you manage that activity effectively? You will also need to monitor which learners understand, not just those that remember, and the ones that don't, how you're going to help them. You need to also then assess that understanding, and you will need to develop this habit of noticing learner responses, either what they say verbally or what they do, and you will need to then monitor this behavior, and you will need to make on-the-spot decisions to maintain the lesson flow. So what is the most effective way to question students to probe their understanding? What clues are you going to look for? And so on. Now, this is all part of what is called pedagogical reasoning. You have your own understanding of a topic. You need to transform it into ways students will understand. You will then give the instruction. You will evaluate that lesson. Then you need to reflect on the evaluation and your own teaching so that you develop a new comprehension. Now, this is what Schulman called pedagogical reasoning and action. So your comprehension transformation, which is what I want to focus on here, is the preparation. Your interpretation and analysis of and structuring and segmenting of the curriculum, so you develop a repertoire that you can use, and also you need a clear purpose of why you're doing this. Representations, what metaphors, diagrams, examples, demonstrations, explanations are you going to use? That is what you need to think of when you're planning. Then you will select from the many different teaching strategies what you think will work best for this. What is your motivation for doing that? How will you arrange the class? How will you organize it? How will you manage it? And then you adapt and tailor it to your students. So a good teacher will know what works with their students based on their age, their gender, their ability, their interests, and so on. You bring all of that and you adapt materials for use in the instruction, and that is where you manage and present or interact. Enact your lesson. You will interact with the students. through group work. You'll need to discipline them. You need to have a sense of humor, by the way. How you will question them, what type of acting learning strategies will you use, and this is all the observable things that you see in the classroom, and that will be part of the things that I'm looking for. Then you evaluate, check student understanding during interactive teaching. Then there will be testing at some stage. You evaluate your own performance and you adjust it for the new time. So you're learning from your experience. Reflection is where you review, reconstruct, reenact, and critically analyze your own performance and the class's performance in terms of how you have taught. And this is what leads to the new comprehension of what you will do better next time, or what you will drop, what you will emphasize in future. You then are developing a wisdom of practice by doing this. Okay, so this pedagogical reasoning cycle is what you will go through with each lesson that you teach. So it's very important that you find ways to consider, and the most important thing here is the transformation. That helps develop your pedagogical content knowledge. And pedagogical content knowledge, or PCK, develops with experience. So your PCK requires knowledge of assessment procedures. You need a knowledge of the curriculum. You need pedagogical knowledge, such as questioning techniques, what's a good explanation, how to conduct practicals that are successful. Then you also need knowledge of your learners and of learning. So learning theories which work best. And then you need your content knowledge is very important. You've got to make sure that you teach the correct content. You also need knowledge of general educational context, which then becomes specific to your class. You can't teach one way throughout. If a school is less resourced, you need to change your teaching style. So you will then, through this, develop your lesson cycle. So what's the purpose of your lesson and the objectives? Always include an anticipatory set, which could include something like tapping into their prior knowledge. Then a teacher gives input. You need to model, you demonstrate parts of the lesson. You might give students guided practice. Then you will check for understanding, and you will bring a independent practice, and then you will close your lesson. Now, when you select content, you've got to think, is this significant? What's the validity? Will it interest the learners? Is it useful? What's the learnability? What's the feasibility of implementing this within your school? So although the content, yes, the content is given in caps, so it has to be taught, but find ways to tap into students' interest, the usefulness of science, and what you're doing, will the students learn? You will select methods. You can have teacher-centered methods and there are student-centered methods. Sometimes there's a place for both. So when you select a method, always start your objectives. What's the subject matter? What's the student's ability? What's your competence in this topic? Do you have access to technology? And do you have a conducive learning environment? So in an under-resourced school, you can't do this investigation that requires lots of equipment. You will also need to then select instructional materials which focus on emphasis. What's the emphasis in the materials? Is it unified? Is it coherent? Is there repetition? Does it use the appropriate vocabulary? Is it audience appropriate? What format is it given in? And what's the caliber of the questions that it asks? When selecting audiovisual materials, such as video, is it relevant to the lesson? Is it suitable to the student's age? Is it well designed and of the right quality? Is it objective? And is the equipment that you're going to use easy to operate? Remember, teachers do spend some time learning to operate new equipment. Now, when it comes to assessment, firstly, in your planning, what do you want the students to learn? That's in your objectives. How will we know learning has occurred? So what are you going to look for to know students have learned the topic? How will you collect evidence that they have understood? So that evidence comes from what activities will enable students to learn? How will students demonstrate their understanding? And how will students receive ongoing formative feedback? And what will be the next step in learning? That's all part of a cycle. Then how will students receive summative feedback? You need to consider that when teaching. And again, what will the next step be in learning, which comes back to your program of studies, the learner outcomes. What do the learners need to know? And that is your cycle of assessment. You will use Bloom's taxonomy to test the cognitive domain. So remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and objecting. And creating. Then there's the psychomotor domain, which deals with skills. So what are the levels for skills? And finally, for the affective domain, what are the levels to show increasing values that you're developing with your students? I will go through this again when we look at how to ensure active learning with students. An important part of what you need to do is reflect. You get reflection in action, where you reflect as something happens. So if something happens in your class, you consider the situation, you decide how to act, and you act immediately. What influenced those, how you acted? Could you have done something better? Reflection on action is reflecting after something happens, where you reconsider the situation and think about what needs to change in the future. Now, there are different types of ways of reflecting. Here's Gibbs's method, where you start with a description of what happened, how you felt, what were you thinking and feeling. You evaluate what was good and bad about the experience. You analyze it. So what sense can be made of this experience? And then a conclusion, new learning. Then there's the Kolb's learning cycle, experiential learning cycle. So you start with your concrete experience. What have you done? What are you doing during this experience? Then you go through reflective observation, where you review and reflect on the experience. That will then lead to some kind of abstract conceptualization, something about your learning. What have you learned from this experience? And then active experimentation is where you then plan and try what you have just learned. So reflective practice is very important. It includes feedback, reflection, study, and practice, self-awareness, action, change, development, and improvement. So as a teacher, what are your beliefs about teaching? What did you experience? What do you think worked? What didn't? You get feedback from your peers and colleagues. What do you want to know? How do you want to explore your teaching? Invite feedback, share your experiences, find a mentor, join a peer learning group. If there isn't one, start one. Invite feedback from students, and you can do this through a simple system. Ask them what works and what doesn't, and be prepared to receive the feedback. Sometimes it can be quite harsh. And all of this must be part of a scholarship. How does this inform your practice and beliefs and experiences in the future? Consider exploring outside your discipline. Conduct your own teaching and learning research study. So think about, this is what reflective practice involves, and this is what you need to do to become a reflective teacher and learn from your experiences. Now, remember, you will be writing things down in your reflective journal. So use critical incidents to explore this kind of thing. So as a teacher, okay, you've learned your theory in your B.Ed or PGCE. You will then experience what happens in the classroom as a teacher. Does theory relate to practice? By reflecting on it, you can develop what is called practice wisdom, what to do better the next time. Always remember, to reflect, you need to analyze your experiences, you need to describe the situation, analyze your knowledge here. What have you learned? evaluate to improve the next time, identify what you have learned and ways of learning. What are the benefits of critical reflection? Well, firstly, research has shown that it contributes to excellence in teaching and improves educator outcomes. To critically reflect as a teacher, you will critically learn, or you will learn to, on a regular basis, look into your practice and ways to improve it so that you can improve teaching and learning, and you'll develop an understanding of the better kinds of teaching strategies to use. Sit back, watch this insert that I've included for this first video of what to expect. Welcome to TETV. We're going to look at the apprenticeship by observation. Now, Lothier, in a school teacher social study guide that was published in 1975, was the first person to explore what teachers did during the day. Among the many insights he had was that the act of teaching was often seen as being much easier than it actually was, because everyone had this idea of what a teacher was based on being students in school. He called this the apprenticeship by observation. Now, this article by Michaela Borg highlights that pre-service teachers begin initial teacher training with a preconceived notion of what being a teacher involves. Pre-service teachers have spent at least 12 years as learners in school. Not only did they observe the teachers, but they also evaluated them as being good or bad teachers. And this contrasts to any other profession, such as doctors or lawyers. You don't come in with these preconceived ideas. This is why novice teachers have preconceptions about teaching. Now, students already have decided whether you are a good or bad teacher. And there are certain qualities of good and bad teachers that students will have, and you yourself probably have an idea in your head, this is the kind of teacher I want to be. Now, this apprenticeship by observation, I'm going to use some examples, analogies here. You go and watch a 1-hour award-winning play, and it's brilliant, but what you don't see are the many hours of rehearsals, the vision the director had for putting on the production, the meeting of producers to get money for, and the meetings and the dealings and the dinners, the hours spent by the costume designer and costume makers making the costumes for the dress rehearsal that you then see the people wearing on stage, the late nights the learners spend learning lines, the director's tantrums when the actors aren't getting his vision, and then the director's time that he has to spend like saying sorry to actors because they stormed off stage, the set designers and the set builders and all the time they spent, the time spent by the lighting director and the technicians on lights, the proms person who has to collect and buy the props that are used on stage and then giving them to the actors during the rehearsals and getting them back from the actors afterwards. The time spent by the sound engineers to search for suitable sound effects that are then used on stage, the marketing and advertising that brought you to that production. Okay, that's the things you don't see. You see an hour performance that you think is brilliant. That's what the observation, that's basically what teaching is like. Another analogy, Caster Semenya, you see her winning her race. Okay, she wins the race, she holds our flag high, and she gets the gold medal. What you don't see are her early morning runs every day. Hours spent in the gym training or on the track training, her mental preparation that she has to do through mental rehearsal to see herself winning and so on, the emotional trauma she's going through because people are questioning her gender identity, her refusal of chocolate cake, which she really loves, because she's sticking to this bland and healthy diet. So that is what the observation of or observation by apprenticeship is like. So during teaching experience, you're going to start seeing that teaching isn't as easy as you thought. You will realize the time it takes to research and plan your lessons. Okay, the work you need to design and adapt materials, the time needed to find the resources that you're going to need, such as equipment for practicals and so on, the extra hours spent at home marking and planning. You will understand how difficult it is to teach. Sometimes you might not feel like it, but good teachers come to school and still are able to teach well. You will see all the mental decisions you have to make when you're in the classroom to make sure your lesson flows. You will see the different types of knowledge you need to plan your lessons, and you will understand the types of problems that teachers encounter every day in class where they have to think on their feet. Well, that's the end of this first video. In the next video, we're going to look at how you will be assessed during teaching experience.